team join me into welcoming Kailash today. Kailash is a self-proclaimed tinkerer. He is an hobby software developer, and for a brief period, he was in academia as well. We'll talk about that also, Kailash. At the Middlesex University in London, he was doing his research, from where he obtained a BSc in computer science and a PhD in AI and computation linguistics. And he currently has technology in Zerodha. You guys know it's the largest stockbroker of India, and founded the tech team in 2013. He also volunteers. I would say he co-founded Force United, and it's a non-profit organization where he started in 2020, and promotes various free and open source softwares in India, and Rain Matter Foundation, which is fund grassroots projects that focus on ecological preservation and climate change. Kailash, tell me, how does this absurdist view really work?
It really comes down to the one fact, the acceptance, realization, followed by acceptance that stuff around us, the events that shape us, our lives, our history, mankind's history, everything, are largely random. That one phone call that completely changes your life, or that one piece of good news or bad news that changes the rest of the history for you. And if you look at it like that, the world is chaotic, and all the stuff that we see, all our ambitions and goals, and all the successes and failures that we see everywhere, rise and fall of nations, absolutely everything can be traced back to really random events that completely change the course of history. So, as an absurdist, I don't believe in a higher goal or purpose. I know that life is random, chaotic. I'll just try and go with the flow and minimize the damage I cause to myself and others around me and the environment around me. So it's just that.
So how do you respond when there's when let's say there's an issue in the production and the engineer tells you that I'm an absurdist, I didn't cause this?
Absurdism does not mean the complete dissolvement of common sense, though. So it's the overarching worldview. You can't really apply that to every single minor thing. I mean, why should I eat now? I'm an absurdist. I won't eat. That wouldn't make any sense. It's just a guiding principle for the for your life broadly, life and worldview. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kailash. I just wanted to make sure people get to know you as a person before we start on that journey today. Kailash, how this the Zerodha story started for you? How did it all come together?
I had no connection to the finance industry or capital markets. But a friend of mine, an old friend of mine from school, he had this idea to build a financial app for the masses, and he reached out to me randomly. I hadn't spoken to him in a very long time, and we started working on this because I thought it was a nice engineering challenge. And I was working on my hobby projects. I was working as a freelance programmer, making a living, and as I said, I just ended up in Bangalore. So where we would hang out, Nitin's first office, Zerodha's first office, happened to be on the same road, opposite side of the road. So because we were working on a financial app, we figured the regulators had said to us that to take such an app to a market, you had to partner with a stock brokerage firm. And we were writing to the large brokers, ICICI, Jewel, Sharekhan, and we never really received any responses. This was mid 2012. We'd see this board that said Zerodha, NSE, BSE, MCX across the road, and we'd never heard of Zerodha. And we'd say to ourselves, what is this Zerodha? We've never heard of it. But one day, Abid really, literally crossed the road and walked in and said hi to Nitin. And it kind of clicked. Then all of us, three of us, we walked into Nitin's office, said hi to Nitin, and we immediately hit it off. So Zerodha was a really small, tiny broker back then. With its discount pricing model, it had already become profitable in its second year. Very modest profits, but it had. And I think when we first met, Zerodha had 5,000 users, 5,000 clients. So Nitin and us, we decided that we'd partner together and we would go to the regulators with Zerodha as a partner broker to get approvals for the app. We spent the next 8-9 months working on it. In the end, we got shot down by the regulators, and we
went. This was in which year? This was in which year, Kailash?
2012.
2012. Yeah. Okay. So we are now reached 2012. Okay.
Yeah, and we went a separate ways,
Okay.
all of us, and
Mm.
but Nitin and I, we were getting along well, and we kept the conversation going. Early 2013, I had by then realized that there was absolutely nothing happening in the capital markets industry. We were seeing really good consumer apps,
Mm.
Flipkart, Redbus, like high quality consumer technology, hit the Indian markets. And when I looked at capital markets, I had built some familiarity over the past year working on all this. I saw that there was a lot of things to build, and it would have been very exciting, like greenfield for a programmer to experiment and build stuff.
Right.
And I really liked Nitin, and Nitin liked me. And we kept the conversation going. Sometime in early 2013, we said, we should work together and build technology here and see where it goes. No particular goals, but let's just build financial technology for capital markets. And in 2013, we created Zerodha technology. And ever since, over the last 9 years, I guess, we've
Yeah.
been we've been doing exactly the same thing, building technology. So completely random happenstance of having spotted Zerodha across the road. If we hadn't done that, I'd never have met Nitin. Life would have gone in very different ways.
Of
And
course.
one of the many reasons why I am an absurdist. These tiny events change
Nice.
the course of history.
So nice. Wow. Thank you for letting us in into that journey. How was the initial some years of Zerodha as a company when you guys putting it together?
So 2000, early 2013, when we started this whole tech thing, Zerodha wasn't a tech company. As I said, there were 5,000 clients, 6,000 clients, and account opening in this industry was an extremely tedious process. You had to sign 40, 50 pages, 40, 50 signatures, courier it. If there was a mistake, it would come back. It was quite crazy. And we never really had any specific goals of building any specific technology or product. Everything was super organic. In the very early days, the tech team was just me, and I'd go sit with people doing different tasks in the organization, working on account openings or handling couriers or picking up phone calls from customers. I'd go sit with them, understand their tasks and problems, and write little automations for them, simple Python scripts. People would spend, let's say, 40 minutes to download a bunch of CSV files, collate them manually. A Python script could do that in 2 seconds. So we really started out by truly digitizing of all the offline stuff that we were doing in the organization. And these tiny little automations grew into bigger automations, bigger projects. At some point, I hired our first engineer, or second engineer, and then we built, slightly bigger projects and bigger projects and bigger projects. 2015, we ended up building a trading platform. So the entire journey has been super organic, no specific plans.
As the company grew, in the next year, some years it started to grow. As an engineering leader, right? How did you find? What were your learnings? How did you find the cascading your principles down to your team? How did you see that happening over the time?
There's no set formula or a training book or guide. That also has been very organic. There's a lot of luck involved in Zerodha's success, and especially the last 2-3 years, which has been black swan events.
It's so humble. It's so humble when you say that. But, yeah.
I mean, that's the fact. So it's, of course, huge amounts of time and effort and hard work, but right time, right place, right market conditions, lots of luck also. So because we didn't have any specific goals, to get to 1 million users or to build a certain platform or whatever, we had the luxury of time, and stock markets were not attractive at all for the longest time. Right? Nobody really wanted to sign 50 pages, especially savvier folks. So that changed in 2017 when we got digital signatures. So these are all unplanned events.
They would have still be a touch point on the field that people would still have to run to, the operations would still be there.
Absolutely. I mean, we probably would have opened maybe 100th or 1,000th the number of accounts we've opened. If it's not online, that's 98% drop off, especially when you have to courier 50 pages worth of forms. So these are all lucky events that have happened.
Mm.
So as I said, we didn't have any specific goals, but to digitize the business slowly, bit by bit, wherever we saw sense. So we had the luxury of time to learn things slowly, build things slowly, break them, learn valuable lessons, by trial and error. And I think that contributed greatly to how the team has evolved. We were not in a rush on day one to, build a stack, build this, build that, attain X number of features. We were lucky to be not in that situation. So the learning has also been slow and gradual and organic. You learn one hard lesson in the super heavily regulated industry,
Mm.
incorporate that into your culture or software development framework, and on over the last many years.
Awesome. So, right. So basically, what you're saying is that you need time to bake in to become
Absolutely, yeah.
the expert for that.
Absolutely. I mean, any sort of expertise in any environment absolutely takes hands-on experience over a long period of time. When you have I'm talking about competent people. I mean,
Yeah, of course.
yeah.
That was
So
my next question, basically. How do you? I mean, what is your view on hiring? How do you find that competent? How do you define that? How do you get to that?
we have a slightly unusual way of hiring at Zerodha.
Wow.
Over the last 9 years, the tech team right now there's 33 of us.
Okay.
So
Wow.
and the rest of the company has I think 1,100 plus folks. So the tech team has grown very slowly. The number of people, number of products, software that we build and maintain internally and externally, it's grown exponentially. But that growth hasn't really been linear to the number of people building them. The same set of people have been building everything. So that our hiring philosophy there is a little unusual. I've always looked for freshers right out of college who are keen, enthusiastic hackers, people who are hobbyists and do hobby projects. So I'm a hobbyist myself, so maybe I'm extremely biased here, but it has worked for us. When you look at someone's hobby projects, hobby work experience is also work experience, even if you
Of
don't
course.
have actual industry work experience. So hobby people build hobby projects generally when nobody's really looking, and they build it because they like building it. And I think that's a big green signal in evaluating somebody's passion for technology or understanding or liking. So I've always hired hobbyist hackers who are very keen, and we've never really looked at anybody's educational qualifications. I would say 97, 96% of the people in the team have no other work experience anywhere. Zerodha has been their first job as a fresher.
Wow.
And you set the ground rules and reality straight on day one. No grand goals. 2013, 14, when we were hiring people, we never said that Zerodha is going to change finance in India. I was always very realistic about what exactly the work is. It's heavily regulated. It's risky. Most of it is really, really boring and painful. But as a team, we can all get along and have fun. And if the organization grows and succeeds, you get to reap the benefits. But
Yeah.
there was no certainty whatsoever. In 2013, 14, there was absolutely no certainty.
Yeah.
So that same principle in hiring we followed all throughout. I'd like to cite the analogy that you cited earlier. So you leave you set up a grassy node, leave it open and see what paths emerge and build on top of that organically. But you can only achieve that if you have the luxury of time and no pressure to build or break or follow arbitrary goals. So that's exactly how the team has evolved. When, as I said in the beginning, it was one person, it was me. Then there were two of us, and three of us, and four of us. And as the team grew, one or two people at a time, whatever really made sense, the structure, the way we communicated, the way we organized tasks, we assimilated each new person into that. And that evolved over time. There was never this one methodology that we tried and failed at, or one methodology that really just worked out. It's just been the dynamic of all the 30 people, 30, 33 people in the team that has really evolved. And I think by 2017, I'd say, yeah, by 2017, the culture, the framework that we have had been fully fleshed out. There's one non-tech person, Shantanu, who liaises with other departments, all the regulations, all the, stuff that comes up.
Of
He
course.
keeps that in check for us. There
Mm.
are two designers who just design, two developers who focus on mobile app development,
Mhm.
and the rest of us, we're all full stack developers, and we work on whatever really needs to be worked on. Of course, this process means that, ownership, mini teams within the 33 member team, these have all emerged. There are principal projects that I handle, that for everyone, there are projects that they own and handle.
Mm.
So these things have just emerged.
Coming up from organic, from giving it time to give its shape is something that you and your team definitely believes it. What I see now.
I mean, Nitin keeps talking about this. Zerodha has been bootstrapped from day one. So
Mm.
2013, when we created Zerodha technology and started creating a roadmap to build technology products and turn the brokerage into a software company, again, we never really raised any funds. So Zerodha has always been bootstrapped, and we we built the entire organization based on our personal philosophies of doing things slowly, cautiously, right thing, right time. As I said, we've never had arbitrary goals to hit X number of customers in a quarter or grow revenue
Mm.
by Y%. So the lack of such pressure uh, or obligations to anyone else really helped us take it easy and slow.
I want our listeners to understand that whenever you say there's no pressure, you are you. I mean, I want them to realize that the Zerodha has so much of people's life saving into it that definitely the easy you are making it to be, that's not that easy, right? So people should realize that the ease with which you are handling is certainly commendable, and we all should learn from it, right? So we're talking about that pressure, right? There's definitely, you have so much of people's life saving into it, right? So every
Yeah,
decision will have to consider that, right? How did you bring about, when you were 2 or 3 member team, you bring other people into that group, into that family of sorts, right?
yeah.
How did that culture evolve? Some things we would have learned, some things other people brought in. So tell us a little bit more about that culture. How did that thinking evolve within Zerodha?
When I say there's no pressure, I mean there's no pressure from anyone asking you to do things that don't objectively make sense. If
Hmm.
you have, for example, if you are heavily funded by n number of external investors, and I'm not speaking against getting funding, I'm just saying,
No, no, no. Of
and
course, I'm pretty sure about it, and we
yeah,
I corroborate with what you're saying actually.
yeah, and there are, if there are varying parties with varying agendas who are all pushing you to go in a certain direction, that is one kind of pressure. That's the pressure that we don't have. But
Uh,
we work in an extremely risky,
uh,
extremely regulated environment. Now that pressure is immense, and that's been growing exponentially every year. Like you said,
yes.
the criticality of the stuff that we handle, the real-time nature of it, that pressure and risk is absolutely immense. It's very hard to sleep in peace at night. Absolutely. I mean, so that this the lack of this other kind of arbitrary, non-objective, irrational pressure to do certain things certain way has
Hmm.
helped us cope with this risk and pressure, because, as I said, we like to take things easy and slow and be extremely cautious. There may be this really cool feature that we like to build, but we may delay it by 4 months because we're not really sure of the risk surface, and we do that all the time. We delay features, we cancel features just because we're not sure of it. So do things we do things extremely, extremely slowly and cautiously by testing things inside out like a million times, and things can still go wrong. But that's despite being so cautious. That's how much risk this entire enterprise carries. So all of these philosophies really put together, no external pressure to do make 10 features this month, no such targets, none of those things. And in no rush to chase revenues or growth, and being grounded about the fact that this is really risky and boring, and you have to be really cautious and work. The team can be fun. Sometimes the work can be fun, but oftentimes the work is really boring and risky. You establish that on day one. The people who can cope with it, they're already kind of assimilated into that culture and that framework of working and that framework of coping with risk.
Nice.
So when you hire people with the right expectations. If somebody is here to work on cutting edge machine learning and you do amazing software stuff every day, that's not possible. And I tell everyone that that's not how this works. So people who accept that fact, they're already kind of primed, aligned to work. And that's how we built our internal framework of working under insane regulatory pressure and extreme risk and taking things very, very slowly and cautiously.
Wow. I mean, so one thing I can definitely see, there's a lot of self-realization and content with what we are doing in the culture that you are describing to me. There's a understanding, there's an honesty to it, as well as because I can relate to it. A lot of times, even good intention with the good intended leaders, they tend to get into the peer pressure of the market and are not as gutsy as saying, no, we will not give in.
Yeah.
We will focus on the right things first, and we will probably not build too many features. We will not expand too fast, but we will do it right. So I think I have to congratulate you and the entire team for standing up to it for what's right, and definitely shows in the kind of product that you guys have made.
Thank you. And this is why Nitin and I, we like working with each other. We don't pressurize each other unobjectively. Even if there's a cool idea that we really like, we break it down. Not just us, today, everyone in the team, that's the culture that has evolved. And we really objectively analyze if it's worth doing it, if it's not worth doing it. And so every feature, just because I like something doesn't mean we just go build it, or just because Nitin wants something, we go build it. We look at everything objectively, and everybody has enough mutual respect to follow this through and through across all teams.
Unwinding yourself is related to the productivity of a person as well. Do you have any thoughts around that?
We're always unwinding. So I don't think, sorry, at least this is my personal view.
Sure.
A lot of programming, writing code, maintaining technology is, mundane stuff. But to create systems that people like to use, create systems that scale, create high quality software, you need a lot of creativity, really. A lot of good software development is art. It's actually more art than science.
True.
So you need to be in a creative mind. You have to have a creative mindset, and the environment has to be creative and facilitative and respectful of that creative process when writing software. If you have deadlines saying build these 10 features in the next 10 days, that's not how software is built. Nobody can say that this feature will take 1 hour or 10 hours or 10 days. So this is inculcated into how we build stuff. There are no arbitrary deadlines. That does not mean that things can slow down forever.
Of course.
So, and to have the creative juices flowing, you have to be unwinding all the time. So, even when we are doing serious work, even when we are going through great times or when we are going through bad times, we are always joking about our own successes and failures. There's nothing that is sanctimonious. We're always memeing each other, always making lame jokes, always having fun, laughing at our failures, laughing at our successes, laughing at little things. Everybody's always hanging out, even when we're doing serious.
Not taking our so seriously.
We don't take ourselves seriously at all. We take our work extremely seriously, and the quality of systems very seriously. But ourselves, we can only produce quality work if we are always unwinded. So there's no work now, unwind later. It's one thing. That's how the culture has evolved.
Nice. Yeah, that's the best line. Yeah.
Yeah, and we do, there are things that we do. We've been playing evening Counter-Strike matches since forever. uh,
Did you ever
every
win?
day.
Did your team ever win?
I used to be the best player when others were beginners. Now I'm now I struggle. I win once
Age
in
is
a while.
catching up with you, Kailash.
So we used to play 8v8, but unfortunately after work from home, it's now 3v3 or 4v4. But it's still fun. It's a tradition. We play it
Yes.
religiously at the end of the day, every day. There are things like that we do also. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll just ask one more question on the technical side. It will not, because there's so much of things, we all would want to ask you. I would want to give some time to the audience as well. When a new engineer comes to the team, right?
Yeah.
What are the first few words of wisdom or an advice, or this you don't do, or you definitely do this? What are those things that you give to that person, or you would want to give to that person?
The first words are always setting the reality straight. This is boring stuff. This is extremely dangerous stuff. There's some interesting stuff. Regulators might come, change everything. We might have to delete all the work we've done over the last 6 months and change everything in a week because the regulators ask us to do. So really laying out the reality. And then
Isn't too much of a shock for the new person, and then you guys make fun of that person? Let's see, we roasted you on the first day or something like that.
everyone gets roasted. So on the first day, whoever has joined, they get roasted, but others also get roasted for them. So they know that on day one, they've already realized the reality of work, the nature of the business, etc.
Right.
Now they have to understand people. So on day one, they know whom to roast in what way. So, there should be no ice breaking left. When they join, the ice is already broken, the reality is already understood. So, yeah, I mean, there are no other words of wisdom. Things have to be learned.
Nothing is specific to nothing is specific to a engineer per se, right? How you should structure your code, things like that. Anything on that front?
No advice or training like that. Everybody, even beginners, literally on the day one or day two, once they're set up, they get to work on a real project. It could be a small piece of an existing project. It could be a larger piece, but they get to work on a real project. There are no, training projects or training period. And by working on that project, could be a Python project, could be a database project, could be a Go project. By working on that, they automatically have to learn how that framework is handled. Even if it's a tiny task to write a 100-line program, there'll be a code review because that's how we do it. And in the code review, they'll immediately learn a lot of valuable lessons because they just wrote all that code. Now it's being reviewed, it's being changed, it's being edited.
And they also build the bonding. They also build the bonding in the team.
Absolutely. Had numerous tech challenges. One of the biggest challenges really has been not with one specific technology, but it's been coping with the legacy infrastructure. I guess you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Integrating with, let's say, the banking industry and whatnot, right?
Yes.
So the legacy architecture of the capital markets industry is super legacy. I don't think anybody foresaw the kind of activity we are seeing in stock markets in the last 2 years, in the last 20 years, not really the regulators, not the exchanges. So when you have to build a consumer business with software that scales, technology that scales, volumes that scale, the underlying technology also, infrastructure also has to scale. To give you one specific example, when you pull all the orders that people place on a platform, they're sent to exchanges via lease lines. And these lease lines have really primitive capacities, like 1,000 messages per second. But we may have 1.5 million people trying to send orders, right? And if you want to send more orders, you have to pull another lease line. And each lease line can only do, as I said, 1,000. To get one lease line commissioned, it takes 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. So how do you even build software and scale on the front end when the underlying legacy infrastructure is just so slow moving and legacy? So the amount of juggling and circus and hacks that we've had to do over the years to build layers on top of layers to avoid, to reduce our dependencies on all legacy aspects of the industry, that has really been the biggest set of challenges. Not specific tech challenges. I mean, you can Google, look at Stack Overflow, do 100 experiments and fix specific tech challenges, but this collection of challenges on building scale and consumer technology on top of really slow moving legacy infrastructure has really been our biggest challenge. It still is. I guess it's a combination of everything that we've spoken about so far: time, effort, common sense, no care for FOMO or status quo, taking things slowly and organically, competence and patience, and of course, huge amounts of luck, right place, right time, everything put together. If we, there's this misconception that for you to grow, for you to scale technology and software, you need to keep on expanding the team linearly. But software does not scale linearly. There could be two people who can build a software system that scales to millions of people. There could be 100 people who build a software system that barely scales to 100,000 people. So the number of people working on a piece of software, it's not a metric for the quality of that piece of software or the scale it can achieve whatsoever. Now, if you suffer from FOMO, if you let's say have external investors who force you to grow, this wouldn't have been possible. So the question that question itself has to be deconstructed. The question, how can 30 people build all of this? I mean, why not? That's how people used to build software. This whole thing about massive engineering teams, that's a rather new phenomenon. This concept of retaining employees, it doesn't really work like that with us, at least. Maybe these are very subjective, and these are my personal views. You don't retain people. Zerodha Tech exists because of the people, the team that built it. So when you speak of retaining people or employees, it kind of is objectifying them. We need to retain these 3 people so that they can do this. These other 2 people needn't be retained. You can't do math like that in such a small team. Maybe you're forced to do that in really large teams, but I have no experience with large teams or organizations. In such a small, tightly knit team, everybody has an important role, and everybody has to work really well with each other. So you don't even approach the team with the perspective of retaining people, etc. If these people hadn't come together and worked together, there'd be no Zerodha. So I'm unable to think like that. I'm unable to describe that either. But I hope that answers your question. In an organization, culture has to permeate top down. If you have an insulated, let's say, management or top management team with whom the rest of the team have no rapport with, or there's no visibility to how they operate, or let's say they're toxic, you can never build a good team. So employees in an organization cannot create culture unless the people, the key decision makers, the people in charge, instill that culture. So culture always has to flow from top down. So if at Zerodha we've ended up having a decent work culture, it's because it has permeated in its entirely from the top, and that's the same for every organization. Organizations with toxic or incompetent management can never really have good teams.
I mean, Kailash, your views are, are very, very honest and very direct. We were expecting nothing less from you, to be honest. And I think all of us are like, people are writing it. They really loved the session, and it was really a pleasure talking to you, Kailash, knowing you as a person. And I, along with everybody here, we wish you all the success in all of your railway projects, in Zerodha and everything else that you put your mind towards.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. It was a fun chat. Thank you.